Alright guys, so I'm here with Moviegeek17. You remember him from his first appearance on here during my Q&A.
It was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was. And it drove us all mad.
Yeah. Is Duke out of the asylum yet?
Oh no, he's still raving and ranting, thinking he's the Doctor's next regeneration.
I should probably watch that show so I can get that reference.
Yeah, you should. But no, we're not here to talk about Duke's state of mental health.
Although we're not?
No, we're not, although that would probably be a 9-hour video.
Probably would.
No, we're here to talk about you, Mr. Moviegeek17.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a little weird for me, but yeah, let's do it.
You're probably wondering, why am I here to talk about, when I usually have people on here, it's usually to co-work on something. Well, today I actually asked Moviegeek17, for those who don't know, he's actually making his own comic book for this group called Ravenhammer, called Fight or Flight. And he just revealed to me the news, yes, it's, as long as he has, well, actually, I shouldn't say further than that. Stop myself. But let's just say he is getting work. Let's leave it at that. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's a fair statement to make.
And I asked him, just out of the blue, if I could interview him and just talk about, what fight or flight is like, and what it took for him to get into this book. That whole jazz.
Yeah, all that technical stuff.
Yeah. So, Moviegeek17, are you ready to enter the comic book grill?
Yeah, I think I am.
Good, because you're not going to be in it. I'm not Captain Logan.
Drats!
I just thought I'd gear you up in case Captain Logan just suddenly decided to do that.
Oh, that would be another level of weird.
Yeah. Anyway, time to get serious.
Yes, let's get serious.
Alright, so, Moviegeek17. I guess the first thing on everyone's mind is, what is Fight or Flight exactly about?
Fight or Flight is... The short-term thing that I always tell people is, it's like if you put the Jason Bourne movies into X-Men's world. And long form, it's sort of that classic scenario of people get abilities, and in this world, the government doesn't really take it too well. Now, I'm not going to go into exact details, but it puts things where the state of the world is incredibly unstable, and a certain event happens in that world, and it'll be explained in the first issue. Not the preview issue, but the first issue, and actually, since I got the image in recently, it's actually the second panel of the first issue. And it's pretty interesting. So this team of people, both human and... These people are dubbed Contaminated, the people with abilities. And their goal basically is to do these wet work, black ops type jobs to try and gain favor with the American government, and so they can get sponsored, but also eventually on a whole with just humanity, period.
Alright. Cool. So, what was the thing that inspired you to do that, exactly? What was your big inspiration for creating this universe and this kind of general plot?
It was, I think the proper term is a hodgepodge of things. I think I said the word right.
An amalgamation, if you will.
Exactly. I was very inspired by X-Men, of course. I got some heroes in there that I was very inspired by. I was also very influenced by some of the Kenshin that I've read, a lot of the comics I read at the time, actually. Just a lot of the newer ones. There was some of JMS's Thor in there. There's some of a little weird hint of Snyder's detective run that seeps in through some of the newer issues that I've written. It's a lot of stuff that I've loved with comics that is kind of transformed onto the page of the book that I'm creating.
All right.
Yeah, it's sort of a long-winded answer.
So I guess the big question is, what did you have to do? What did you have to fight through to get where you are now with Ravenhammer and all that?
Well, I first tried to write this thing almost just as a fun... It was supposed to be a movie at first. I was going to write a script for this as a movie. And it was my senior year of high school. And about 2 years ago, I got back from... I'll say the convention. I went to Cincinnati's Comic-Con, and me and a couple of buddies decided that day we should make a comic. And they were doing their own things, and I was trying to think of comic ideas, and it occurred to me that I didn't really have any. But then I remembered that I had this story that I was trying to make a movie on. I thought that could do really well as a comic. And it was something me and a couple of my buddies worked on as well, just for the record. But I decided, you know what, this would make for a better comic, and I spent, oh my god, probably, like I said, 2 years of my life constantly tweaking the story of this thing. It's gone through so many drafts in concept that I can't tell you, maybe like 10, 12 different drafts of how this whole thing arc-wise was going to go. And then I've probably put about 3 or 4 drafts down for the first issue. So basically a lot of failing and a lot of editing and a lot of learning.
Alright. So, how did you get in touch with Ravenhammer exactly?
Well, it was luck. I always consider myself a fan that got lucky, because I didn't get in touch with them. They found me in an indirect way.
How was that?
One of my friends was working at a Subway, and the guy that happened to work at Ravenhammer and was a regular at Subway, would just come in and order sandwiches on a regular basis. They mentioned to him that I was writing a comic, because I was talking to them every now and then, and I really wasn't too good about talking about my comic at the time. I was kind of insecure about it. So they talked about it for me, and this guy heard about it and talked to his boss, who was the head of Ravenhammer, which is an indie company in my area. And he asked for my script, and I gave it to him, and he said, yeah, do you want to make a comic?
Wow. So
yeah, it was probably one of the happiest days of my life.
So I could just imagine this thought of you just leaving the big meeting is like, do you want to write a comic? Yeah. Okay, you're in. I just walk away as like, thanks guys. Will you excuse me? Yes! Yes!
Imagine that in email form, but yeah, pretty much.
Were you
I
like,
couldn't sleep that night.
Were you like just running around like just running around the halls like, I did it! I did it! One guy's probably pokes his head out. Did you finally learn how to use a toilet?
I remember being very cryptic to my friends, and they were asking me questions of like, what the hell happened? Why are you being so cryptic about this? And then I told them, and
dear God, it's like you were trying to tell him I'm pregnant.
Sort of, in a creative sense, I guess.
Like I could just imagine, like, guys, I'm gonna write a comic, and all your friends are just suddenly just screaming.
That did happen. One of them hugged me.
Dear God, it was it was like you were pregnant.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, me and my friends are tight back at home.
Yeah, I know I'm making all these jokes, guys, but I'm friends with Moviegeek17 here, and I couldn't pass up the chance of that that joke.
Yeah, you know what? It's all fair, and yes, we are good friends.
Yeah. So the other stuff is, you want to talk about some of the characters, or at least maybe a few of them, not to give away too much about your comic?
Yeah, sure. Well, the main character is Brett, and I have the character designs up on my homepage. I believe the video is not to do a shameless plug, but the designs for those characters are up on, I think it's my second updated video. I think I call it comic book update, but I'm not entirely sure. You'll see it because it has one of my characters in art form drawn by my artist SR Ayers. Really cool guy. And Brett is sort of this visually idea of Colossus, but there's a lot more going on with him than what Colossus would have to go through.
Just out of curiosity, what do you mean by that? Because Colossus has gone through some major shit.
Yeah, Colossus has gone through some major shit. And God, this is one of those fine line things where I want to tell you some, but I don't want to give it all away, and that's really hard to do with Brett in particular. He's at this very weird place where he can go down a lot of paths. He can go down that path of being this really good hero, this very great leader of this team. Or he could go down this path that means that he's going to completely shut out his human side. He's going to completely shut out everything. And he's just going to be on his own. And that's sort of, not to be incredibly cryptic, but that sums up his situation, and that kind of sums up his powers, too.
Alright. Any other good guys or villains? Because, you know me, I'm a big fan of supervillains as all, so I gotta know what some of the villains are like in this book.
Okay, well, one of my villains, I can only talk about one, but there's a reason why. You guys will understand as you read through this, but there's a character on this team that I don't want to call him like a Sabretooth on, what was on the Weapon X team, sort of? You know what I'm trying to go for?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, well, there's this guy I call Hannibal, and he sort of has that Bullseye-Sabretooth kind of complex of he loves killing. He'll go out of his way to get a kill, even if it means, like, screwing over other teammates. Like, if they're fighting and one of them gets flanked because he tries to kill somebody, he just says, oh, well, your fault for not paying attention. But what I like about him is that he is one of those characters where on the surface he's going to appear one way, but there's a lot more to him than appearances.
Alright, so that's the only one we get, sadly.
Yeah, the other one that comes out of this is, it's one of those things you guys will find out as it goes, but it's, my favorite villain is, when you see him, he'll play a very direct part in Tales to Come.
Alright. So, for most people, for you it was luck, but for most people, you just broke into the industry, so to speak, you're part of an independent company. First off, you must feel like, you're like walking on air, right, as it is right now. But, what advice can you give to people who do want to write comics in general? Not everyone can have a friend in a sandwich shop and the said writer comes in and is like, oh, my friend's writing a comic. Oh, let's see what you can do. That kind of thing.
Okay, well, yeah, there's a lot of things you can do outside of sheer dumb luck, which that's what I do call that with me. That is dumb luck. I'll take it, but yeah.
Hey man, at least you got in, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, true. I'm not going to argue with an opportunity. It's right there. So, the easiest, well, this isn't the easiest thing, this is the hardest thing. Work on your craft. Make it the best thing that you can possibly put out. Refine that story to where you know pretty much every line like it's the back of your hand. And the better the writer you are, the better of a chance you have of getting noticed. But not only that, from my experience anyway, you're going to have to try and find an artist and start paying for the book before you get a hold of a publisher. That's sort of the way it's going for if you want to get noticed. You kind of have to not only have a script, sadly, but you kind of need, for the most part, you kind of need some pages, too, to pitch to them. So maybe you pay for maybe the first 2 or 3 pages of the book and try and entice a publisher that way. That's for some of the indie companies, and that's probably for some of the bigger companies, too. Though I think for Image, they want much more detailed, like, arc plan and outlines. Either way, it involves a lot of planning on your part and making, once again, back to making the best story you can possibly make, because that's what'll get you in, guys.
Yeah. So, next question, I guess, is, like, this is probably the most, basic one right here. So, out of all the companies, for the, in the comic book industry, out of any of them, like Marvel, DC, you could even say, like, even Image or the other ones, what book, actually, this is probably going to be a few questions, and this first one being, if you could publish Fight or Flight under, Ravenhammer's been really good to you, but if you could have a choice, if you could have it reprinted in another company, which one would you want?
Vertigo.
Alright. Any reason why?
I think Vertigo has a really great indie reputation to them. A lot of my favorite independent books tend to come from them. Hellblazer, Scalped, American Vampire. They have a really good reputation for being like a writer's sort of indie branch, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, even though, that's the thing with Vertigo. That's kind of like the debate with Vertigo, because that one's kind of hard to determine if it is an independent company, because it is part of DC. So it's really hard to say, can it be an independent company, or can you call it a part of the company? Part of the mainstream.
True. If you don't want to count Vertigo, I guess my secondary answer would be Image, because Image does have a pretty good reputation for being a writer's company too. So
yeah,
I'd go for those two if Ravenhammer wasn't in the equation.
Yeah, but I mean, no disrespect to Ravenhammer, because hey, that's the reason you're living the dream, more or less.
Exactly. I try to respect and acknowledge where I've come from. I try not to let that stuff get to my head.
Of course not. Of course. So, by the way, I want to ask you about Ravenhammer. This is probably the first time I've asked you about this since we've talked. With Ravenhammer, what other superheroes or other books, are from the Ravenhammer comics, and is yours like one of the flagship titles?
Well, they're still a fairly young company, but they have published 2 other books that I know of. And there's a third that's on their site, but I'm not entirely sure how that one's being made. There's one of them that's called the Harlem Shadow.
All right.
He's an African-American-based superhero in the 1920s, and living in Harlem and trying to make a difference in that portion of the city. And I've personally read that book, and that's a very solid comic.
That's actually, from what you said, that sounds like an awesome title. That sounds like a fucking awesome book.
It is. Like, side note, when I first looked at Ravenhammer's site, I looked at the titles of their books, and that's the one that jumped out at me the most. And for the record, if I ever had to write one of their titles, I would write that one.
Yeah, because you never, like, I would, the idea of a African American pulp hero would be cool. I mean, I guess you could call it a noir or pulp story.
I guess it kind of can go whichever way they want it to.
Yeah. But that's like, I could say that's a first, possibly, if that's in the... I could be missing someone like a African-American superhero from the 20s. I could be misplacing them because they always shovel out... Because when you think of pulp heroes, you think of Green Hornet or Shadow or the Phantom.
Yeah, you're right. None of them really come to mind for me. I guess if you want to count the Spirit... Well, no, not the Spirit sidekick, since that one's kind of racist, isn't it?
Yeah, technically.
I shouldn't count that one then, but yeah, that's one of their titles. The other one they're doing is Lucius Hammer, which is... I've read the first 2 issues of that one, and that's another African-American character that's going to be a superhero. And I'm not entirely sure what time period that one's set in. They're technically in the same universe as Harlem Shadow.
Alright.
And it's sometime after that character. I know that for a fact. I think it's in the 60s or 70s. So it's sort of like... And I'm not the writer of that book. So from what I've taken of it, from what I've read of it, it's sort of like a mock-up, I guess, on blaxploitation, and then cramming some superhero elements in there. And it's also sort of has that period piece sort of feel, too.
Awesome. So... Yeah. So the book is basically... That book is basically... It's in the same universe, but it's in a different timeline. That's new.
Yeah, it's...
Well, I guess you could...
It's...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, it's pretty interesting. I know that they've gone to Chicago's Comic-Con once to promote the book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, different heroes and different timelines with the Invaders and all that, but they brought them all back, and they were young for a while. But it's supposed to be two different heroes, no relation, basically.
Yeah, there is a slight, not a physical relation, not like an uncle or father relation.
Yeah.
But Harlem Shadow does have a little bit of an impact on Lucius Hammer. I won't say how, but there's a little bit of a cross in terms of that.
All right. So, I guess the next question, this you probably figured this question was coming. This question is, if you could write for any company, who would it be?
Oh, that's hard. Can I say both? Because we both know I'm probably gonna say Marvel or DC.
Well, let's make this a little more interesting. If you could pick just one company.
Oh, okay. And
it doesn't have to be Marvel or DC. You can pick anyone.
Okay, any company. I'd still say, after I'm done with Fight or Flight, and I think I still have another story or two I want to tell at some point. I think I want to tell some of my independent stories before I would even go into superheroes, honestly. I'd want to get all of my original tales out of my head before I would even want to tackle a superhero tale, but I guess I would say Marvel, honestly, because there are a lot of characters there that I would want to write at some point.
Mm-hmm. Any specific characters, and where would you want to take them?
Oh.
yeah. The plot thickens.
Oh, I was gonna make a video on this. That's the funny thing.
Oh, you can skip the question if you want.
I'll tell you 2 characters.
All right.
I'll tell you 2 characters. I'm going to make a Thor book at some point, or I don't want to say I'm going to. I want to.
All right. Where would you just a little hint of where? Because I know you want to do this in the video, so just a little tidbit of what would you want to do with Thor?
Well, if I had a run with Thor, I would sort of pick up some of JMS's strengths and take them in my own direction. But there's a story that's a little bit more powerful in my head that I want to tell. And in a lot of ways, it's Thor's Dark Knight Returns or Old Man Logan.
Wow. Because
in a lot of ways, and this is the way I take the character, Thor is your first and, in theory, last line of defense in my eyes. He's going to be that guy that's going to take on that most powerful threat first, and if he gets taken out by him, what chance does everyone else have?
Hulk, maybe?
True, but that's just sort of the way I take the character. Like, I remember when I was watching some of Avengers stuff, and he's just such a selfless hero. Like, he loves humanity so much that he's willing to risk his life for him, even though he's technically not one of them.
Yeah.
Like, I just love those ideas, and, like, that's sort of why I like him as being, like, that sort of first and last line of defense sort of character.
Alright. What was the other character?
I also really want to tell an Iron Fist story. I don't know if I'd want to make it an ongoing title, or if I want to just make it an alternate universe title, but I would really like to make Danny I want to give Danny a solid book again. After the Brubaker, Fraction, and Swazinski stuff, he just kind of went away, and I think he's too interesting of a character to let that happen to.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't have a specific idea for him yet, but if Axel Alonso walked up to me today and said, "I want you on Iron Fist," I'm sure I'd think up an idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just right on the spot. Iron Fist is going to fight a robot. Why? Because I fucking can.
That'll be the start of my arc, and he'll have a robot sidekick.
And we'll call him Awesome Bot.
He is Awesome-o.
But so I guess this one's a little more obscure question, and this one might be a little odd. But if you could cross over your fight or flight book with any other character, what crossovers would you like to do with fight or flight? In terms like if other companies or even with characters in Ravenhammer.
Ooh, that is a good question. Let's see. Well, it would be kind of a weird sort of team up. Would be like maybe a Green Arrow sort of team up, like a pre-52 Green Arrow.
Ah, you'll never get that. That's the sad part.
Yeah, would never happen. But I think that'd be kind of a cool little team up. Just seeing those two, like, sort of on opposite ends of the law.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a one off the top of my head. I would never the crossover I would never want to do. I would never do an X-Men and fight or flight team up. That would. I think, one, I'd have a hard time writing all the X-Men characters, but two, that would just be really weird.
Yeah, just too close to home.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah. Well, on the other hand, I mean, it would be interesting. I mean, there are a lot of characters that the X-Men have come across that they helped inspire. Kind of like the Wildcats were kind of like that before they went to Image. I mean, not Image, Wildstorm, and DC now.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I guess, like, the other thing that'd be interesting is, like, which of my characters would interact with who in what ways? Like, would Brett and Cyclops get along, or would it be sort of Cyclops talking more with Achilles? Or I'm kind of curious to see, like, how those guys would talk, I guess.
Yeah. Any others?
Let's see. I guess it would be sort of interesting if Thor popped in. I love Thor, so like I wouldn't be able to pass up a chance to write him.
Yeah, all right, I'll give you that. Any others? Like, let's make this question a little bit bigger. Like, if you could cross over with anything, since comic books are pretty much in the realm of you can do whatever the fuck you want sometimes. Let's say, like, if you could cross over with anything, TV show, book, anything.
Okay. Well, first off, if I could do any comic book, this is going to be the most out there thing ever, but Scalped. Jason Aaron's independent book for Vertigo. I'd just go nuts with that. That'd be fun.
Scalped in Fight or Flight, man, that'd be whoa.
Oh, that would be pretty. I think the art styles sort of they're not the same, but they sort of blend a little bit. I think their tones sort of exist in a similar universe in a sense, I guess. In terms of movies, I guess I'd enjoy throwing them into Resident Evil's universe. Not the movie Resident Evil, but the game Resident Evil's universe would be kind of interesting.
Alright, cool.
Like a Leon Kennedy crossover.
Oh yeah, that would be fun. So that's pretty much all I have in terms of questions. This is the first time I've kind of really done interviews per se, and this was just really fun. I had a lot of fun just talking with Moviegeek17. Subscribe to him. If you can't, subscribe to him. He's a really awesome guy, and he's still got a low subscriber count, and I keep wondering why the hell is that. It's impossible. It's impossible.
I like to keep a low profile.
But anyway, I'd like to thank Moviegeek17 for taking time to join me on this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we're out.
See you.